There's killers on the loose in Alberta. The RCMP are continuing its manhunt after a young father was killed on Tuesday. At the time, residents were told to shelter in place at their homes. But the RCMP are now being lambasted for their response. They did not warn residents that the killers were driving around in a stolen city truck. And now, 5 days later, they still have not released description of the suspects. Let's dive into the details. I'm Rachel Parker, and you're watching the Alberta Roundup. Alberta RCMP have released a photo that is believed to be of potential witnesses in Tuesday's fatal shooting that has led to a province-wide manhunt for 2 suspects. On Tuesday, just before noon, 2 people were shot and wounded, one fatally, in an incident that resulted in a manhunt for the 2 suspects who fled in a stolen vehicle. A Rocky View County employee was murdered on the side of the road. He was a young father named Colin Hoff. A Fortis employee was also shot in the arm at the scene of the crime. Description of the suspects still are not available. On Thursday, RCMP said investigators are looking for help identifying the occupants of a car that may have witnessed Tuesday's fatal interaction. It's a dark gray Volkswagen Golf sport wagon, potentially from between 2013 and 2015. You can see it pictured here. While Calgarians were told to shelter in place, another controversy was erupting, that of the RCMP's slow response time. Western Standard columnist Corey Morgan documented the RCMP's brutal response throughout the week. In a Wednesday column, he wrote, "Yesterday while driving, my phone and radio station blew up simultaneously, as an emergency alert had been issued. The voice warned that 2 extremely dangerous armed individuals were at large east of Calgary, and that people in the area should lock their doors and windows while sheltering in place. That was it. No description of the gender, age, size, clothing, or race of the individuals. Just a warning to say how much danger people are in and that they should cower at home. The situation didn't change for hours. People were expected to hide out and await word of new developments. It sounded as if nothing was happening, but indeed it was. Details were emerging on a local meta page of a County of Rocky View work truck being chased through people's property. They even posted pictures of the truck, and it was known, at least to the people on that group, that the violent offenders were in that truck. Early in the evening, the RCMP reported that the scene of the crime was secure, but that the dangerous criminals were still at large. They were confident the criminals had fled the area, and that people could again emerge from their homes. Nothing more. Corey went on, "At the time of this writing, the RCMP still hasn't let us know anything. We don't know anything of the description of the killers, which way they went, what their motive may have been, or if there are leads. Why the hell are they remaining silent?" At the time of recording this episode on Friday afternoon, the RCMP still had not released descriptions of the suspects. Moving into our next story here, a surge in immigration has forced the province of Alberta to dip into its coffers to spend hundreds of millions more on educating in the coming year. The Alberta government has approved an influx of $250 million to be distributed through the province's school boards for the 2024 to 2025 school year. The announcement follows Alberta's unprecedented population growth, resulting in a surge of new students. Education Minister Dimitris Nicolaides said the provincial government seldom announces funding outside of the budget cycle, but the rising cost pressures caused by the population growth had to be addressed immediately. He said, quote, "I am confident that this new funding will help ensure that Alberta students continue to receive a world-class education." Alberta Premier Danielle Smith previously told True North that Alberta's unprecedented population growth of 200,000 people last year resulted in over 22,000 new unfunded students. The $250 million in funding will be split up, with $125 million allocated toward operational funding and another $90 million meant for modular classrooms. Finally, some good news for Albertans who are hoping for some relief in their pockets. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith said that an accelerated tax cut plan is in the work for the province. Take a listen. This is from my friend Adam Seuss at Rebel News.
There is a plan for tax cuts, but I think what you're asking is if people will see an accelerated plan for tax cuts. And I can say yes. From what we are seeing, one of the things that we were concerned about was making sure that any tax cut that we do is not going to put us into a deficit position. With the uncertainty that we saw in oil and gas prices, some of the uncertainty about how other sources of revenue would grow, with the growth in the province and the growth in revenue, we wanted to be absolutely certain that this $1.4 billion tax cut wouldn't put us into deficit. We're getting more of that certainty, and as my finance minister gets more confidence, we'll be able to develop an accelerated timeline.
And Adam did a full interview with the Premier. You can head over to his X account or to the Rebel News website to watch that full interview, which I absolutely recommend you do, as Adam is an incredible Alberta reporter. Moving into the controversy of the week, I'm going to try to get through this one without laughing, because I know that some of you guys are still living in Calgary and that this is just probably quite painful for you at the moment. Turns out that there is 16 more sites that need to be repaired in Calgary's major water feed main that burst earlier this summer, and we are going to be going back into stage 4 water restrictions. Take a listen to Calgary Mayor Jyoti Gondek.
There are 16 locations where there are stress points or weaknesses in the feeder main, and we need to act in the short term to do those repairs. That's why we're giving people 3 weeks notice to understand that on August the 26th, we will need to commence the repair work, and it will probably take until about September 23rd. If we don't address this now, we could have another unexpected failure like we did in June. We do not want to take that chance right now.
Obviously, this entire situation was incompetence from start to finish. They should have taken more time to ensure that the feeder main was in working condition before they refilled it. Now it needs to be drained and repaired again. We're basically just moving backwards at this point. I do have the greatest amount of sympathy for the people of Calgary. Let's just hope that next fall you all take your anger to the voting booth and do something about it. Finally, moving into what we're watching in the weeks to come, this is a happier story for those of you living in Calgary and for the rest of Alberta generally speaking. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith says that the fall update to the province's Bill of Rights will protect Albertans' personal medical choices, including the right to refuse a vaccine. Smith's pledge came during a town hall in Bonnyville with over 300 UCP members, where she discussed strengthening residents' liberties and freedoms, lowering taxes, protecting the province from federal overreach, and improving healthcare. She confirmed the plans in a statement to True North, saying, quote, "In the fall, we will be introducing legislation to amend Alberta's Bill of Rights. Several amendments are being considered to strengthen Albertans' individual and property rights, including an amendment to guarantee Albertans the right to accept or refuse a medical treatment." Before becoming Premier in 2022, Smith pledged to amend the Alberta Human Rights Act to prohibit employers from terminating employees based on their vaccination status. But she ultimately scrapped these plans after she was elected. At the time, she called Albertans losing their jobs for declining to take the vaccine a, quote, human rights violation. However, the Public Health Act takes precedence over all laws, except the Alberta Bill of Rights, meaning an amended Alberta Human Rights Act would have done little to protect medical choices in the face of public health edicts. Finally, moving into our weekly comment roundup, last week I hosted a panel discussion with Tariq Alnaga and Marty Belanger, better known as Marty Up North, and they said that they are feeling a bit disillusioned with Danielle Smith's premiership and that they hope she makes changes in the coming weeks so that they can continue to support her as premier. I'm going to take a look at a few of those comments from last week's episode now. User Edgar Edgerton said, "Only other option for Alberta is the NDP. That would be devastating. The problem with Alberta is that we are stuck with Eastern Canada's Liberal NDP co-conspirators." I wanted to respond to this comment specifically because I saw many similar comments. I don't really agree with the idea that if you are unhappy with a politician that you would otherwise support or who represents a party that you would typically support, it means that you automatically want the opposition to win, in this case, the Alberta NDP. I think it simply means that you are holding that political leader to a higher standard and you want them to actually push for the policies that they said they supported when you elected them. So I think holding a politician to account and saying that you don't feel they've done an adequate job, as the panel was saying last week, I don't think it means that you are hoping for, an NDP win. Just as when we look at the federal Conservatives and say, we don't like that they've done a good job on this. Pierre Poilievre came took a long time to come out and say that he was going to lower immigration numbers. And he was criticized that for a while. And I don't think that people criticizing him were saying, oh, it's better if we have 4 more years of Justin Trudeau. I think that what they were actually saying was, Pierre, we need to lower immigration. And that criticism worked because Poilievre eventually came out and said that he's going to drastically reduce immigration numbers. And I think that's what the criticism of Danielle Smith here is seeking to do. It's saying, listen, Danielle, we want an Alberta provincial police force. We want lower taxes. And I think maybe they've been effective in that. We just, even today, we had a segment on the show about tax cuts coming for Albertans. So I think it's misguided to say that to criticize a politician is to desire that their opponents would be elected. User BB10 said, quote, no one was handed a bigger mess than Javier Milei of Argentina, yet he has made incredible progress in just 7 months. He has slashed the size of government, is running a balanced budget, and is effectively tackling runaway inflation. Last month saw the first month in 40 years with 0 food price inflation. Some people were also arguing that Danielle Smith hasn't had enough time to make changes, and this user is arguing that some politicians are able to make strides within just 7 months. So he appears to be arguing that that point is not quite correct. And it's true, Javier Milei is doing amazing things in Argentina. It's been quite amazing to watch. Sorry if I keep mispronouncing my words. I am quite congested. I have a little bit of a lingering flu, and I'm doing my best to get through today's content. So hopefully you guys can all understand what I'm saying. Okay, and finally, user at Blade797 said, quote, I like this woman, but I want her to dig her heels in regarding immigration and even harder stance on trans ideology than her current one. So, those were some of the comments that were also raised in last week's episode, which I highly recommend you go and give it a watch, give it a listen, and post your thoughts about it in the comment section below. Okay, everyone, that's all we have time for today. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Alberta Roundup. I'll be back next week with more content for you guys. Have a great weekend, and God bless.